A neon is so contagious as a secret. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, but just the same, it's very catching. Clusters of toadstools bent their heads together. Even the leaves on the trees whispered to one another, and the branches hummed as busily as telegraph wires. The squirrels and the bunnies and the chipmunks tittered and squeaked among themselves and then settled back on their haunches in a most tantalizing manner, as much as to say, "Oh yes, I know, but I tell you." And the look of all of them put together said just as plain, "It's a secret." Everybody in the whole forest seemed to be catching it, everything and everybody except the little red squirrel. "Oh me, oh my," he said to himself, "it won't do at all if I let them see that I do. No, I'll just pretend I'm." Off he went with a leap over to Mama Chipmunk. "Lovely morning, isn't it?" he said. "Have you heard the news? Everyone is full of it." "Full of what?" asked Mama Chipmunk, as cool as a cucumber. But the little red squirrel kept on pretending, although he knew it was no use. Swishing his bushy tail and trying to look mysterious, he said, "Oh well, if you don't." "Ha ha ha," laughed Johnny Chipmunk, sitting on a toadstool, while his sister shut her mouth so tightly it almost looked as if she couldn't trust it. "Oh me, oh my," sighed the little red squirrel when he was alone again and flattened himself out along the branch of an old oak tree. Above and all around him, the birds were twittering and tattling among themselves, as though there were a fire in the tree next door. Tweet, tweet, tweet. And every minute it grew harder for the little red squirrel to go on pretending he knew what it was all about, so when he was sure no one saw him, the smile disappeared, and a terrible pout took its place. The birds were far too busy and important to even notice. They fluttered and chirped and flew back and forth spreading the secret, but not one of them came down to whisper into the ear of the little red squirrel. "Oh me, oh my," he sighed again and began to run up and down the branches and take flying leaps to the ground, but no one paid the slightest attention. And then he had a bright idea, a capital idea, and off he went as though he had wings, to ask the squirrel who lived in his tree, one flight up. She was such a chatterbox he felt perfectly certain he could count on her to tell him what all this fuss was about. 1, 2, 3, he leaped from branch to branch until he was just below her door and could hear her high-pitched voice running along even faster than usual, but at the sight of little red squirrel, she stopped right in the middle of what she was saying and didn't even bother to close her mouth. Her eyes fairly danced and her furry tail twitched with excitement. He didn't quite know what to do, so he just turned around and went down to his own house and closed the door. But no sooner was he inside than he wanted to come out. As quiet as a mouse, he turned the knob and very, very slowly opened the door again. If someone had suddenly said, "Boo," behind him, Key would probably have jumped up right out of his skin. He was in such a state. And small wonder, with the goings-on all around him. Even the raccoons were washing and brushing themselves. Mama Raccoon made her little ones sit perfectly still while she inspected them from head to foot, or rather, we should say, to the tip of their fuzzy, striped tails. Everyone was in a holiday mood. The squirrels, too, were busy fluffing out their tails. They slicked their coats and their little paws flew back and forth over their faces until they almost didn't look real anymore. The pheasants puffed out their plumed chests and strutted around. The bunnies appeared as white as fresh fallen snow with a touch of soft pink inside, each long ear to match their eyes. They all seemed to be vying with one another to see which one could look the most beautiful. Perhaps it was the secret that made their eyes shine and dance with mischief, and their little feet move so fast they hardly touched the ground. But whatever it was, it worked like magic. The morning was gone before it had begun, as mornings have a way of doing when something is afoot. Presently, a little breeze as light as a whisper arose and traveled around from leaf to leaf, from one animal to another, even stirring the feathers of the little birds. It was a signal. Out of the bushes, up from holes in the ground, down from the sky far and near, they started to arrive. "Oh me, oh my," gasped the little red squirrel when he saw them coming in his direction. He darted down the trunk of his tree as fast as he could go. Of all things he was going to hide, he scurried this way and that, looking for a likely place, and finally ducked down under an enormous toadstool. It spread above him like a parasol. But though he tried to make himself as small as possible, there he was for everyone to see without even stooping down. First came the bunnies, grinning from ear to ear, followed by the chipmunks and the squirrels, while overhead the birds swooped dizzily back and forth. From all directions the animals came, chatting and laughing and twittering. It was a gay procession. On and on it came and did stop until it reached the very toadstool where the little red squirrel was hiding. He grew so nervous and excited, head jumped up and down. He couldn't bear it another minute, and standing on his hind legs, he popped up over the edge of the parasol toadstool. His eyes almost jumped out of his head when he saw all the animals gathered there. Even the youngest little deer were there. There were animals to the right of him, animals to the left of him, animals behind and in front of him, animals all around him. He pursed his mouth and gave a low, long whistle of astonishment. From all directions, as far as he could see, more and more animals were arriving. Groups of twos and threes. "Jiminy Christmas," he said at last, and his tongue was so dry it stuck to the roof of his mouth. He didn't know what to think. And you wouldn't either if your head were crammed as full of great big question marks as the little red squirrel was. He did know what to think, and if he had, it would have done him any good, because he was completely numb from head to foot. It was exactly stage fright, but almost. Well, the old mud turtle was the last to arrive, as everyone expected. He was huffing and puffing and grunting to himself as he waddled behind the rest. Some little birds flew out to shoo him along faster. "Tweet, tweet, you're holding up the whole party, hurry up." And there it was at last, that fagel-dagel magical word, party. The animals couldn't wait until the old turtle reached the edge of the circle before they all began to sing at the top of their voices. "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, little red squirrel. Happy birthday to you." Poor little red squirrel. He was so surprised. He could hardly stand up, and if he hadn't been leaning on the old toadstool, he most certainly would have fallen down. He just grinned and grinned at all of the animals, and they could see how happy he was. The birds sang, "Surprise, surprise." The excited squirrels chattered shrilly their glee. A couple of baby chipmunks who had never been to a party before were all eyes, and they nestled up close to the little red squirrel because they weren't at all sure what would happen next. What did happen was the most fun of all. Scattering in different directions, all the animals began to scratch and dig up the ground. Everyone was busy as could be. It was almost like a treasure hunt, except that each one knew exactly where to dig and what he was digging for, because only a few hours earlier he had buried it there himself. And what treasures there were when the feast was spread: assorted nuts and berries, and tender green shoots, and all kinds of delicious, crunchy little bugs. There was a special treat to tickle the palate of every one of them. 144. Little Red Squirrel ran happily from group to group. He ate and he laughed and he chatted. He told them all how he had tried to find out what the secret was. He even told how he had pretended to Mama Chipmunk that he knew. All the animals laughed and laughed at that. The bunnies and the little raccoons ate and ate until their tummies looked like toy balloons. Only they didn't feel a bit like floating up to the sky. In fact, it was very difficult to move at all, so they just sat and talked about wheelbarrows and how much fun it would be if one would suddenly appear so they could all ride home in it. Altogether, it was the happiest, liveliest party you can imagine, and the liveliest, happiest one of them all was the little red squirrel. He could hardly contain his joy. In his whole life, he had never been so happy as this. And here he was, 2 years old today. All this fun was for him. All the little forest people had come to his party. When the shadows crept farther and farther over the ground, Mama Deers called their young ones to go home. Please, not yet, they begged. We're having such a good time. And they looked as sweet and adorable as they knew how. It had always worked before. Each one of them knew, even before she spoke, that her mother would say, "Well then, just a little while longer." Meanwhile, the mischievous chipmunks were up to all sorts of tricks, setting a shocking example for their little brothers and sisters. And the worst of it all was that the other animals never suspected the chipmunks of tweaking their ears or pulling their ties, because when they turned around there sat Johnny Chipmunk or his sister, who was just as bad as he was, looking as sweet and innocent as if they had just come out of church. Naughty little squirrels, everyone scolded. Instead, and indeed the squirrels did have a guilty look, always scampering off and swinging from the highest branches, as much as to say, "Catch me if you can." Over in the clearing, 2 little bunnies played hide-and-seek with a young deer, while he stood with his back against a tree. Counting slowly up to 7, the cottontails scurried off to hide. Lying in the tall grass, still as still, they cocked their ears to listen, but all they could hear was the bump, bump, bump of their own little hearts pounding away like trifhammers. 4 long ears peeped above the grass like 4 tiny church steeples. Anybody at all could have seen them, even a baby deer, but each time they were discovered, the little bunnies laughed and laughed. They thought it was the most amazing thing. Tweet, tweet, chirped a messenger bird, flying low over the heads of the playful young. "Dear, your mother wants you right away. It's time to go home." All the little shadows joined hands as the sun slipped slowly down behind the trees. It was getting late, time for all the little woodland creatures to go to bed. The party was over, and all the sleepy forest friends trooped off home to dream of the good time they had. Johnny Chipmunk, the little raccoon boy, and the chattering squirrel were the last to leave. Swinging on a low branch of his tree, the little red squirrel was loath to turn in. "Oh me, oh my," he sighed to himself. "I wonder how long it takes to make another birthday."